Well, hello everyone, Sean here, and today we're going to be taking a step back and actually make a pretty simple video. It is indeed the tier list, as you can see right here, with a certain subject that I like to cover. So tier lists have been a trend for a long while now, and I think they're still a nice little tool to kind of give an idea of how a person kind of views on things when it comes to certain subjects like sandwiches, what's the best flavor or topping for a donut, etc, etc. So this is also, of course, highly used for like gaming, such as like fighting game characters, heroes from certain other games like Overwatch and such. So today, in this case, we're going to be taking a look at Pixar movies and how I feel about them in terms of tier lists and such. So not too long ago, I actually was able to catch up on every Pixar movie that's out there right now, minus Soul, right? That's like the upcoming one that's for this year. And so obviously I'll probably maybe update this one real quick, but as we have here right now, this is going to be the tier list video, so for Pixar movies. So it was a fun little journey, and let's see how I rank these things. So let's see here. Okay, so first off, this is not going to be finalized until I guess right at the end of the video. So as I put these movies on the tier list, they're going to be moved around. So that's going to be a warning I want to put out there. So I guess we can start with this one. We have Up right here. And so this was one of the big ones during my high school years, I remember. And so Up had a big impact, especially during the first half, let's just say. And that's just kind of how I felt when I watched this movie not too long ago. This is one of the more recent watches on Disney Plus. Thank you, Disney Plus, for putting every one of those movies on there. Anyway, I felt that this movie was really strong on the first half, and it kind of like lost some traction on the second half. Not bad, but it's just like that impact sort of lost it, sort of, you know what I mean? Like that, the traction that it first set during the first half was kind of gone a little bit, because at that point it kind of turned into like this typical sort of rescue story at that point, when it was all about, him coping the loss of his loved one. Forgive me for forgetting his name, but the main character's name, he lost his wife, because she passed away or something like that. And I'm gonna look this up real quick, but anyway, that's bothering me. But anyway, it was overall still a good film. Carl, there you go. Carl lost his wife, and I mean the overall concept is still pretty unique, like a lot of these movies. So it does still have that Pixar sort of magic to it. But I just think that the overall view I have for Up is that I felt that the first half was the best part of the movie, in my opinion, with the whole balloons and the house thing, and I don't know, that the whole storytelling with him and his wife was like pretty I guess different from all the other ones. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain ish, but yeah, but so we can put this at B, a pretty safe sort of spot for right now. It may change. It is subject to change at some point, but I just kind of have a feel about Up. It was pretty good, all in all. So anyways, let's get on to the next one. I'm gonna go around a little bit here. Let's just do Finding Nemo. That was one of the other big ones in high school around the mid 2000s, I believe it was. And this one was a pretty good one, in my opinion. I would definitely put this a little higher up automatically comparing to Up. I don't know, it was like a little memorable. I like the premise of it, Nemo having the smaller fin and all that stuff, the characterization, stuff like that. Memorable characters. I like Bruce, I like Dory, and all that stuff, especially during the first movie and all that. So I would still put this on the B tier list, but higher than Up, to say the least. And of course, so that'll be subject to change. So again, I'm gonna say that for the last time. Let's get around to, let's say, Wally. Wally was such a interesting specimen because this was mostly almost like a silent movie. It's like a long short. But with that said, I didn't like it. I didn't hate it or anything like that. I thought it was a pretty unique story, even amongst all these Pixar movies. You know, they're all kind of unique on their own in their own right, but Wally was definitely a unique one at that. With that said, though, I mean, did I absolutely love the movie? I wasn't gonna say I loved it strongly, but I think I definitely give credit where it's due and give it that the sort of like, you know, dialogue exchange and all that stuff is a lot more unique because it involves with, you know, a robot like Wally, where he kind of hardly has any of that. Of course, the other characters do, but our main protagonist is kind of like the closest thing to like almost like a JRPG protagonist, you know, the silent ones anyway, that don't get to talk. So for right now, though, I'm going to put this on the A tier list just because I thought it was pretty unique. It was still a fun sort of experience. And I don't know, even at that, though, I would put that at the highest B tier list comparing to these two anyway. But let's just leave it there for right now. Let's see. So next up, we're just gonna talk about Bug's Life, since my mouse is kind of like pointing over it. I'm just like, But anyway, Bug's Life, I actually watched this like a long time ago, like not in theaters, but I first watched this in a classroom. One of my, it was like one of those days where on a Friday, you know, you get to do whatever you want, sort of thing. So they popped in a movie, and Bug's Life just happened to be one of them. I just remember, man, the big TV, big CRT or whatever, and that big old hulking TV, VCR, pop that bad boy in there, turn off the lights, and that was our day, pretty much. It had a really cool casting at the time, you know. It had Kevin Spacey as the villain. I think it was Hopper was his name. It's been a long while. The caterpillar was really cool. I love the whole like German accent sort of thing going on with him. So pretty memorable. What from the character standpoint, when it comes to the story, can't really say I can't like remember every single scene, but I did remember the right on top of my head, the scene with with the rain and all the bugs getting hit and stuff like that. Those little parts I do remember, but I just don't really strongly remember the structure of the story and all that stuff. But with that said, I still liked it at the time as a kid, and I can definitely say it was still a movie I can remember to some extent. So, but with all that said, I'm gonna actually put this a little more towards A. I'm not really sure if it's higher or lower than Wally, but we'll come to that point. So I'm just gonna put this right here for now. So that's The Bug's Life. Let's see, what's next? What should we talk about next? Let's talk about one of the newer ones. So let's take Brave. Brave was, how do I put this? One of the more backseat sort of movies. I honestly felt. It was, I don't know. Comparing to all these movies and such, I felt like this was more of, I don't know. It just kind of was just there. It wasn't horrible or anything like that, to that nature, but it just doesn't really stand too tall comparing to the other movies. Just that's just my 2 cents on it anyway. But I did like the whole backstory behind it, all the themes around it, that sort of thing. Ireland, that's Scotland, that sort of setting, and of course the ancient warriors sort of thing. I think I want to say they're Vikings, but they could be Anglo-Saxons, that sort of thing. I think there were a bunch of ancient warriors, that are supposed to come together and such to carry on tradition. But the whole movie is about being able to be yourself rather than being stuck in the shadow of these traditions and such. So I did like those aspects of things, but as a Pixar movie, in comparison to others, I just kind of felt like it was more of like an afterthought in comparison. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and I'm not saying it's bad, but in comparison to the other Pixar movies, I'm gonna put this right now, at least, in the C tier list, or the C tier, excuse me. Although lastly, I will say about Brave is that the hair was well done. Like the technical aspects of Brave were, it definitely was like, hey, we know how to do hair. You know what I mean? So I think that was like probably one of the significant things about Brave is the nice the nice red hair, kind of being showed off, and especially when it was like all curly and stuff like that. That was I'm pretty sure that was like a very ambitious sort of tackle on making this movie. So that's probably like one of the hardest parts of the movie itself is, other than the story writing, of course, is getting the hair done, getting the hair right. So I'll definitely give credit on that part. All right, so let's talk about another sort of memorable Pixar movie. I mean, they're all pretty memorable for the most part, but there are some exceptions, but I'll get to that later on. Let's talk about Cars. I'm kind of hovering over this. I'm like, staring at this. I really liked Cars. I know Cars gets like a bad rep in comparison. It probably is considered like the most sort of controversial out of all the Pixar franchises, just because of what it did and what it has done in the past. The first one, from what I can understand, while it may be the best one out of all of them, is a carbon copy of another story. Which, at this point, it's kind of like giving the same sort of rep with Disney. Disney always kind of takes these stories, but they at least try to do something else with them. I think what people have accused of Cars in particular is that it's a pretty like one-to-one sort of copy of whatever story it was trying to copy. I forget what it was exactly. Let me look that up real quick here. But with that said, though, I still liked how the story rolled out. I liked the characters, the whole idea of like Cars, like talking in that sort of fashion. They have the face and everything. The whole character designs was a really cool idea, and all that such. This take on the anthropomorphic sort of thing, but with Cars, I think that was a really cool idea. And yes, these are anthropomorphics because they have some traits of human characteristics, like the eyes, the mouth, the way they express their emotions with their bodies. That definitely puts them under sort of that same tree with all the anthropomorphic animals and all that stuff, but just off a different branch. That's the whole point here. But let me see what it was taking it from in terms of the story. Doc Hollywood, I guess. And then there was another one. There was another movie that was mentioned there, but that's not important. That's not what we're trying to. I'm not trying to go off of that too much. We're trying to make a tier list here. I really like the soundtrack, especially with James Taylor. I love the guy. I'm really biased about James Taylor. Our Town was like the best thing that came out of the movie, honestly, for me anyway. So that's like that will give it the extra points. And so I'm pretty much going to give this like the highest sort of B tier that I can ever give. So I'm gonna move this over and put this right there with the rest of the B tiers, like Finding Nemo and Up. But yeah, so Cars it's the highest B tier I can give. Let's just go ahead and do the rest of the Cars films. Number 2, that was, it took a turn for what people have considered for the worst. I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, I mean, this is a very good babysitter movie. I think that's like the nicest way I can put it. It's very, I mean, if it's hard to say because this does have the Cars 2 title on it, so it does. It does give it sort of that disappointing sort of vibe, because if it was called something else, it would have been fine. I think that's the whole problem here. It's a very spin-offy sort of film, and not an actual like mainline sort of film. So I think the biggest problem is the name, which is Cars 2, when it's all about, you know, the old tow truck Mater. So I mean, yeah, they're trying to do the whole like spy film sort of thing. It was pretty dark in some parts too. So I'll give it that. They actually went out their way to kind of express some sort of violence, to kind of like give it the this sense of scale, like going up, the conflict, or the, you know, the what do you call, things were on the line, let's just put it that way. And so I'll give it that. But even with that said though, it's pretty much like I said, it's a babysitter movie, and there's not really much to take away from this, other than it's a spy film. There's some fun little bits and pieces, but really other than that, that's all I can say, just to put it nicely. So I'm gonna, for right now, give it the lowest or the high, or I don't know. There's gonna be a D film, and man, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in the D tier. I think that's gonna be it. That's gonna be the grade it'll get in this here video. So that's just what I'm gonna say about that. Now with Cars 3, this was a redemption arc. This was definitely a lot better. I enjoy this as a Cars film, and so I'm actually going to give this one the highest C. That's how I'm gonna give it. I thought it was nice, especially by the climate of the climactic part of things. The what they did with the story was pretty nice, and I didn't have any problem with what they did with the main character and all that stuff. So not gonna spoil it, of course. But with that said, though, it's probably gonna be the highest C tier that I can give. So that's that. All right, so next one up, let's talk about Coco. Oh boy, Coco. This one's a tough one. Not because it's bad, but this was tough to kind of get through initially, because I watched this, and I don't mean to make this into a sob story or anything like that, but I actually caught this on Netflix at the time, around 2017, not long after my grandfather passed away. So I guess I watched it as a form of a pick-me-up of sorts, I guess. But I think at the time, though, my friend Danny brought it up to me about it, like, hey, you know, Coco is out on Netflix. You know, I definitely give this a recommendation in sorts. and funny because he's Mexican, and this whole thing is a whole thing about his Mexican culture and the music and remembering the dead and all that stuff, celebrating death as a part of life and such. And so I went ahead and gave it a watch, and honestly, I think it was really, really good. And I really, really did think what they did of like how they revealed the villain and all that stuff, and the storytelling and all that was really good. I really, really liked it. Even though like it really surrounds a subject where you would think it would, wouldn't make a really entertaining story or a cool sort of film. It was just so good, in my opinion. So for right now, I'm just gonna give it like the highest A tier that I can give out of the list here. It may go up to an S tier. I mean, I really, really think that is a really good film. It's a really good film, which I didn't expect. And the villain and all that stuff. I really didn't think this movie wasn't gonna have a villain. It was just all gonna be about kind of like a protagonist trying to get through the motions, that sort of thing. But there's the sort of that Pixar sort of magic coming in, and I think it was a really good, cool way to kind of bring in the villain. So very major kudos on that one. Let's see. So that was Coco on the A side of things. Very good. Let's talk about something that's on the opposite end, unfortunately, and that's the Good Dinosaur. This is kind of a tough one because it's not, I mean, of course it's not a bad film. I think for the most part, like, Pixar films aren't bad, but there's really nothing to go off of. I'm trying to look up my tweets to sort of provide a reference of how I felt back then and now when I watched it. And this was one of the more recent ones too. I watched this one on Disney Plus along with the third Cars film, and yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about this. But just give me a second here. But when it comes to the technical aspect of things, it is really, really good at the time. I like the water effects and all that stuff, the weather effects and all that. I didn't like some of the themes around it too. There was this one character who's a scavenger who kind of follows the wind sort of thing, and he always went by this philosophy of the storm provides. The storm always provides, because every time a storm happens, likely someone is dying or someone is left behind and they're helpless, you know what I mean, which does get you thinking and all that stuff. And so are these characters really villains, or they're just trying to survive, you know what I mean, just for the sake of surviving and such and living on. And so I don't know, those parts definitely was probably the the most interesting parts. But I forget his name. I think it was Sam Elliott. I think he was another interesting pick for as one of the characters to voice or provide his voice. He was like the big T-Rex with the scars and all that stuff. That was an interesting part as well. And he definitely was the appropriate actor to portray that sort of the scarred veteran sort of character, so I did like that sort of pick. But yeah, I now I brought it up, I remember what I first thought. It's a nice tech demo with a fun, simple story. I think that's what we can take away from this. They had the whole like Firefly scene and such, and so it really showed off like the lighting capabilities and all that. But yeah, I think at the time I believe I give it a oh yeah, I have it right here. A 6.5 out of 10 for Good Dinosaur. It's just, a really simple story to follow. There was that bond between the long neck, I'm gonna say, and the human, I guess you can say, the caveman or cave boy, Neanderthal, that sort of thing. That character. So it was a nice little interesting bond, and then the sad, sobby parts came in. Such, I don't know. Like, I hate to do this to Good Dinosaur, but I mean, no, I don't know. It's probably gonna be a little higher up than But you know what? I don't know, because at least with Cars 2, it's got cars, and I do like cars. I'm a car guy, not as much as before, but still a car guy no less. And there were some fun parts to it. And here, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, you know what I mean? There's if well, I don't know. Kids like dinosaurs too. So, if I had to pick a movie for babysitting, I mean, there was a lot of explosions here with Cars 2 and all that stuff, like a lot of action sort of sequences and such. And this is more like a, feel good dinosaur sort of story, hence the name and such. I don't know. But either way, it's gonna be in a D tier list. I'm sorry. Oh man. That's that. And just for the record, these two are tied. There's no order for these two. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Well, let's talk about one of the classics, which is Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. absolutely just high up there for me. I love John Goodman, love him, and also Billy Crystal. Love those two, especially when they're together in this film. It was it's not only unique of what they're doing with the story and theme, but it was just fun. It was just a fun story. So I think really here, with that said, I'm gonna put this go ahead and put this in this S rank. I think that's pretty much it. And you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and put this up there as well, Coco. The lowest S tier, but S tier no less, right? Along with Monsters Inc. I love Monsters Inc. and I think really Coco is a good movie as well. Having it to aim more towards like Mexican culture, it was a good story on its own. Now, because I mentioned Monsters Inc., I'm gonna go ahead and do Monsters University. Monsters University, it was still, despite being a prequel and such, and how these sort of movies go, it was still pretty fun. I love, again, John Goodman and Billy Crystal. They were still really, awesome together, and it's really nice to see them, in a more updated sort of setting. The technological side of things. See Sully, updated and such, and the textures and all that stuff. Really come in for these two. It was just nice to see them one way or the other. The storytelling was really good, and to see them how they led up to where they are in the first with the first film. I like how they connected together, and it still felt like a interesting and yet fulfilling sort of telling of where they come from and where they wound up. So Monsters University definitely deserves, for me, a rank right here, and the highest A rank so far. It's just I love John Goodman, Billy Crystal, great casting, all around. Love it. Love it. Absolutely. So anyways, and let's see, sorry, I was bringing up more notes here, but anyway, it's getting a little harder. But This isn't like a top 10 film or anything like that, so we can still move things around here. Anyway, let's talk about another memorable one, much more memorable one, which is Ratatouille. Ratatouille, like a lot of people talked about this film. I don't know why. Oh, and by the way, I watched Monsters University on Disney Plus. I also watched Ratatouille on Disney Plus as well. One of the more recent watches, and people were just like, "What? You don't watch Ratatouille?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, I had a fallout. Admittedly, I think after Incredibles, I just completely was like uninterested with these other Disney films because they're just like, I don't know what happened. I fell out of Pixar for a little bit. Or for a little while. So I kind of purposely missed out on Ratatouille when it came out, Finding Dory when it came out, Up when it came out, Inside Out. And I think that's the gist of things. And the Cars movies. I missed out on the Cars movies as well as Brave and Good Dinosaur and all that stuff. All the movies I missed out on, I just went ahead and watched it on Disney Plus. So thank God for that one. No, not sponsored by Disney Plus or anything like that, but pretty cool, I'm gonna say. Well, back onto Ratatouille. When I watched it, I can definitely see why. It was loved by a number of people, and the theme around cooking and such, I'm a sucker for that. I like cooking, you know what I mean? Like, of course, I can't be a chef. And I think we all want to be that sort of chef, but it's hard. And a little like Remy is kind of inspiring in that sense because, he's also passionate about cooking, but because he's, a rat, he can't cook. He's looked at as this dirty little animal and a pest and such. And it's just, interesting of how it was all brought together. And like, of course, the final like battle, with the big food critic, you know what I mean? That was like absolutely the most memorable part, definitely. And that was like the part that a lot of people were talking about, that's that I can definitely see that now. So I think this is one of the higher ones, I would say. And but do I this one's kind of hard. I mean, did I like this more than Monsters Inc., Wally, and Bugs Life? I don't know. That's the thing about it. And I know I'm like kind of jumpy about it. I'm not really like explaining things when it comes to Ratatouille as to why, but I don't know. It's just kind of hard to explain on this one. Overall, I think it's like, what did I give it, like a 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or something like that at the time? Let me look that up real quick here. But I guess my tweet, or I guess I didn't tweet about Ratatouille. But anyway, overall though, I definitely see why people were talking about it. But I think maybe it's the fact that I'm older that it might have an effect on me. If I watched this when it actually came out along with the other people, I might have kind of been sort of marinated with the hype and such, so things might have been different. But I mean, with that said, it's a 7 out of 10. I think it's just a wonderful film. I really like the critic, the food critic. I forget his name, but he was definitely he's like one of the reasons as to why those chefs pursue to be number one, that sort of thing. One of the reasons anyway. Anton Ego, there you go. Anton Ego was absolutely just, man, I don't know about him, but it's just, he definitely was like one of the glues that held the film along with Remy and such. But anyways, with that said though, for right now, I'm gonna give this I'm gonna give it the B. I'm gonna put it in the B. Cars, right below Cars, because I love Cars. James Taylor. I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe it might be high, lower than Finding Nemo, but a little higher than Up. I'm gonna decide that by the end of things. But anyway, Let's get this one out of the way. I should have gotten this out of the way with Finding Nemo. I apologize for that. But Finding Dory. Finding Dory. It was funny. There were some funny parts to it. I will give it that. And so, I'm gonna actually give this one the highest C tier I can give. Especially when Dory meets up with all the aquarium buddies and such, like the whale, the whale shark, the whale that had the echolocation problem. Yeah, it was and also the octopus. I forget his name. I think it was let me look that up real quick. But nice characters. Really liked the characters. The story was like absolutely sort of like you know what I mean? Because it's like you gotta find this person again. It's like what, or find this character again. It's like what you know what I mean? So oh yeah, Destiny was the whale shark, and then where's the beluga whale? There you go, Bailey. There you go, with the echolocation problem. But yeah, I think that's pretty respectable. It's the highest C tier I can give. A little higher than Cars 3. Just because I felt like the scenes and such, the characters were funny, in my opinion, over the Cars cast for number 3. But let's see. We're winding down to this. Let's do this. Incredibles. Oh my gosh, one of my favorite, absolutely one of my favorites. The first film was really fun, and from what I can understand, it is a technical marvel. This is where they were able to achieve the technical difficulties of hair. I believe this was the film where they broke through that barrier, and now they can do hair like it's almost kind of nothing. And particularly I'm talking about Violet's hair. I think I remember watching the behind the scenes video with Incredibles, and they were talking about Violet's hair being the most difficult thing, and they were able to achieve it. I could be wrong. There could have been another film before it that achieved this sort of thing, but maybe they perfected it in Incredibles. So I don't know. But yeah, that's just kind of one of the things I remember from that behind the scene. But the film itself, I loved it. Syndrome was great. He has some of the most memorable quotes of all time, and that's kind of I think that's pretty important for a movie to be that much memorable. With the whole when everyone's super, no one will be. That was such a clever quote from Syndrome of all people, right? Definitely I wish they were able to bring another villain like him to Incredibles 2, which I will talk in a bit here, but I loved every minute of it. I love the music, the musical score, the action scenes, the voice acting and such, the characters, you name it, man. Everything about it was really good. Even with the looks kind of being dated comparing to Incredibles 2, but the story and everything really holds up. And it's an animated film, so it does still age all right. Because it's 3D, and 3D movies tend to reflect on how good the technology is, and technology is just rapidly growing as we speak. So it does give it that hard aging sort of pounding there. But with Incredibles, it holds up because of the story, characters, and all that stuff. It's just that much memorable. So I would absolutely put this high, up there with on the S tier. A little higher than Monsters, a little higher than Coco. That's how I feel about The Incredibles. The first one, anyway. Now, when it comes to the second one, technical marvel, looked great. Unfortunately, the story itself doesn't quite hold up as much. They kind of altered some of the characters a bit, not to my liking, and not a lot of people's liking either. With what they would with Bob, and they kind of just pretty much switched it around. You know what I mean? They switched around with Bob and Helen, and that pretty much where it kind of fell apart. And the villain reveal was kind of like an eye roller, you know what I mean? But there were some scenes that I really liked and such, like the motorcycle scene with Helen. That was really, really cool. So the technical aspect of things, the action stuff was pretty good. The looks of it, of course, you know what I mean? This is naturally being one of the newer movies, so incredible. I can say that for those parts. But the story, that's probably the weakest aspect of things. But with that said, I'm still gonna give this the absolute A tier right here. I would say it's tied with Monsters University, just because Monsters University had a more fun story, or like the integrity of the story was stronger than in Incredibles 2, but the action scene and such, that I would give it that over Monsters Inc. because it's not that sort of story. But anywho, but you know, if I had to pick one, I don't know, maybe Incredibles 2. But anyway, I don't know when it comes to the cool factor sort of things. But for just overall movies, they still hold up for on their own. You know what I mean? All right. Now I'm gonna save a certain franchise for last, but let's get this out of the way. Inside Out. Inside Out was one of the neat ones. You know, it deals with emotions and all that stuff. It does make it a very relatable film for a number of people nowadays, especially for, you know, the millennials and such, with emotions and such, with depression and all that. So there's really not much to go off of. I forget her name. She was like happiness or whatever, and then sadness, you know what I mean? You know, forgive me if I have to type in my way to remember the little bits and pieces of the film. But again, I did watch this on Disney Plus a while back, and joy, there you go, joy, you know, and sadness, it was all about them, and the other emotions were sort of side characters and such. But for what it is, it's still a pretty good film. I do like it a little more than others. I think the concept of these emotions and memories and personality, sort of islands and such, yeah, nice way to put it. So this is a little hard to say, but I will put this I'm actually going to put this right there on B, you know, lowest B. The story's a little more clever than, let's just say, Finding Dory, but, you know. Anyway, probably the lowest B tier that I can give. So that's just my 2 cents on it. We're Inside Out. Pretty fun film for what it is, for what it's worth. All right, so let's talk about this one. This Onward was supposed to come out in theaters of this year, and it had, you know, Chris Pratt and Tom Holland and all that. Unfortunately, with the COVID situation, that didn't happen for me anyway. It did come out in theaters. It was one of the last movies to ever come out in theaters for this year, and but they actually went out their way to make this available on Disney Plus. So I thought that was a really cool thing, and I was like kind of on the fence to just go out my way to watch on my own time in theaters, even with the situation, right? But Disney Plus came to the rescue, and I was like, yes. So I watched it, and that was pretty good. I did like, you know, how it all wrapped up. The ending was really, really good, very emotional. You know, the overall story, yes, it's a little more on the basic side of things, you know, the whole quest thing. But let me see if I had any notes from Twitter that I can pick up on. But Chris Pratt, great. Tom Holland, great. They had good chemistry together. Well, anyways, it's a pretty simple story to follow. There's not much to go off of. The overall characters were entertaining in their own right. But yeah, it definitely is all about I forget the main characters, but Chris Pratt and Tom Holland's characters, but their bond together and all that stuff. It really did a good job making that sort of theme around it, and storytelling and such did hold up. And the conclusion of things, I think that's really where the strongest point comes in, is the ending, the way how it all wrapped up and such. So I really think they did a good job on that part, how it all kind of just comes together. The first half, like the first parts of the film, were kind of like okay, whatever. Just seemed like another typical sort of movie, but man, like right at the end, it's like wow, you know what I mean? So it only goes up from there. So with that said, I would give this one a B tier, but just because most of the film, it was all right, but the end of it, yeah, it was really nice. So I will give it that. It's kind of like the opposite. It's like I'm gonna put this next to Up, just because it's like the two opposite ends, you know what I mean? So Up was really interesting for the first half, and then Onward, I guess you can say it was interesting during the last half. So I put these two films tied up with each other in the B tier anyway. So I think that's pretty appropriate with that sort of logic. All right, we had a lot to go through, but now we have the last franchise, and I just absolutely love this franchise, which is Toy Story. The Toy Story series really just is my favorite of all time when it comes to Pixar. I'm so biased towards it, but I love it, man. That's just how I feel about things. I'm gonna just start from the start to finish, you know what I mean? So the oldest movie, Toy Story, of course, the original Toy Story, absolute S tier. Loved it as a kid, still love it as now, as an adult. It really still holds up. The looks, it's got its charm to it. For some reason, it's even with Incredibles, it does have its own charm too. But this is one of the first films, one of the, if not the first major film that really did this sort of animation. So one of the first ever, and I remember I understand that there were films before this that did that, and the Pixar shorts, they really showed off what 3D can do. But Toy Story pretty much like popularized and set in stone that these movies are around. 3D animated movies were here to stay, and Toy Story, in my opinion, really showed that. I love the storytelling. I love what they had for Woody and Buzz. It's one of the films that really doesn't have a major sort of antagonist unless you count Sid. But I really think he was kind of like a side villain. It was just all about Woody and Buzz overcoming their differences, and of course Woody had his jealousy towards Buzz because he was a new hottest toy, but he kind of forgot or doesn't realize that Andy still loved Woody, you know what I mean? So it was all about that, and I just love the scenes and all that stuff. I definitely remember like absolutely most of the movie, like 95%, if not 99.9% of the film. So that's how much I really love this movie when I first watched it. And it even has like some of that Disney magic too, especially when Buzz hits the button and they start flying and stuff, you know what I mean? So they had that music rolling in. It's like, oh man, all the nostalgic goosebumps came back in when I watched this again as an adult. Like, oh man, that's such a really good feeling. Really good feeling. Absolutely. All right, so that's the first Toy Story movie. This one, Toy Story 2. This was, you know, a unique specimen because this is like a movie that's sort of suffering the sequel curse, sort of. Not as good as the first, but still, it was pretty good on its own thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about Woody being kidnapped and such. I don't know if this came out in theaters. I don't know. But with that said, though, it's still a pretty good film. So I'm gonna put this in A right away. This one definitely had a villain of sorts, right? There were two villains, but I'm not gonna give that away. But you know, it's an old movie, so at that point, it kind of, I guess, is a little pointless. Anywho, I still liked it for what it was, so I think I'm just gonna put it right there. It's still funny. There's still some funny parts to it too, and they did improve upon the human characters too when it comes to the technical aspect of things. I forgot to mention too, when it comes to the first Toy Story. Woo! If you look at the human characters in Toy Story, whoa boy, man, that's completely different from how they do humans nowadays from Pixar. Man, it's so different, very different. But you know what? You know, I can definitely ignore that, especially with Alf in Toy Story 2. But anyways, I kind of liked what they kind of did with what Al said when he was talking to the Japanese person on the phone. Involving with mustaches, but anyway, very funny little pun and joke amongst the Japanese American / just Japanese community in general, which is funny. You know, that's just kind of a bit of those like extra little points that I give. Anyways, let's talk about Toy Story 3. This one was like such a really good way to wrap up the film, I thought, at the time. Like, it really showed off the technical jump of things. Everyone looked really good, and it just absolutely, like, you know, it really was a good sort of way to just absolutely put a cap on it. You know what I mean? Put the seal on Toy Story. I know, yes, there's Toy Story 4 right there, but kind of spits on that a little bit. But man, it was so heartwarming and fulfilling. I can go on about this, but I'm not trying to. I really had a lot of fun with this. It was really funny too. I love Mr. Tortilla Head, and it really showed off, like, you know, the abilities of the toys. You know what I mean? I really like the storytelling with Lotso, the baby, the clown. You know what I mean? Like, forgive me for forgetting the clown's name, but Chuckles. I think it was Chuckles. Yeah, man, it was like, man. And it's hard to believe that this film is 10 years old. I'm like, what? That is crazy. And it doesn't even look like a 10-year-old film. It doesn't feel like a 10-year-old film, or from the looks of things. But my goodness, man, it is still nice to still hear, you know, Tom Hanks and Tim Allen and the rest of the gang. You know, of course, Don Rickles, I believe his name was, with Mr. Potato Head. May he rest in peace, of course. Man, it was just like, from start to finish, I loved it, man. That's all I can say. So I'm gonna put this absolutely on the S tier, even though, like, it kind of isn't the end anymore. But you know, it would have been. I think it's a good way to, one way to put it is a good way to end the Andy saga, and a indication of a start of another character, you know, another owner, I guess. So this is where it comes in. Toy Story 4. You know, at first I was like, man, they should have ended at Toy Story 3. What the hell, Pixar? What were you thinking at first? I was kind of upset. Number 3 was so perfect as a conclusion, man. But after I got over that, watched it, I loved it. I absolutely still love the film. Now, can I say I loved it as these other films? That's hard to say. It's really hard to say. You know, of course, Woody once again is the lead. He's the leading character. And things take a turn for an interesting turn, you know what I mean, with Bonnie and Woody, you know what I mean? Especially with what 3 was supposed to establish, but, you know, it is what it is, I guess, and kids kind of do that with their toys. Anyway, with that said, though, I think Toy Story 4 is still gonna be, like, around here, but I would say it's, like, no better than these 3 films right here, Incredibles, Monsters, Inc., and Coco. So, just keep that in mind. So, maybe I should just maybe put in between. There we go. There you go. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on it. When it comes to that. Still, I mean, although the look for Toy Story 4, incredible. I thought it could not have looked any better. It still, like, absolutely looked incredible. Especially with the cat, you know what I mean? Like the lighting and stuff, incredible. It still goes to show that these movies can only look better, you know what I mean? So that's technology for you. That is technology for you. So I think this tier list is pretty appropriate, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You know, tier list is like a very personal thing. It's everyone's gonna have a pretty different tier list, in my opinion. I don't know. It's all opinion based, and I think that's what makes these videos fun. You know what I mean? And you get to see the different perspectives on these subjects that you guys love. Also, you know, anyone out there who likes Pixar movies, this is something I guess worth looking at for a little bit at least. Well, let's start from the D tiers. In the D tier, we have Cars 2, and then we have the Good Dinosaur. Both of these films are pretty much tied with each other. Finding Dory, Cars 3, and Brave. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead, and I know I said this movie was funnier. At least this part did something a lot more brave at the end, ironically. So I'm gonna actually move Finding Dory a little lower, but this is like a close race, ironically, again, no pun intended, I guess. And I think Cars 3 just barely makes it up there with the C tiers, when it comes to these 3 anyway. Now it comes to the B tiers. There's Cars, Ratatouille, Finding Nemo, Onward, Up, and Inside Out. I'm actually going to go ahead and move this Finding Nemo over Ratatouille. I think, you know, realizing that Nemo had a lot more likable characters like Bruce, Crush, even Dory at the very first time, and Nemo, of course, very likable. There are other characters like Pearl and such, you know, oh, I inked myself, you know. And Ratatouille, you know, you can only go off of so much, you know what I mean, with Remy, the sous chef, I forget his name, but, you know, the main sous chef. Just a fewer characters to, like, for me to, I guess, remember, I guess, or like. In Finding Nemo, I just like the characters a lot. You know, I remember really liking Bruce, Crush, etc., etc. Sorry about that. Onward and Up, like I said, they're pretty much tied with each other because they kind of have like the opposite sort of phenomenons. So Up was, you know, great in the first half, a little weaker on the later half, while Onward was like, okay, you know, first half was okay, but the ending was like, oh my gosh, you know, really nice way to wrap it up, you know what I mean? So I don't know, maybe a film like that is stronger in that sense, so maybe that's why it is appropriate to have it here. But really, otherwise, you know, Up is still a great film in that right. So either way, it's tied. It's either tied or this one's a little higher, but doesn't matter. These two are still good. And just B tiers for me. Inside Out, you know, I mean, I said my piece already. But anyway. And like I said, Cars. I love Cars and James Taylor, you know, with Our Town. Like, it's very appropriate even today, of course. Especially now, you know. Especially now. But because it's in the B tier because the story is not exactly original, you know, so that's that. For the A tiers, we have Toy Story 2, Incredibles 2, Monsters University, Wally, and lastly, Bug's Life. Now, I'm actually gonna go ahead and say that Wally and Bug's Life are kind of tied, you know what I mean? I don't want to say, oh, Bug's Life is better than this or that. You know, I know these are like two, I mean, all these films are entirely different from each other, but, you know, in terms of liking it, I don't know. It's really hard to say now. I mean, sorry, I'm like all over the place, but I think I'm going to give Bug's Life the slight edge, but I don't know. I mean, man, it's really hard to say now, because, I probably should have to go back and watch Bug's Life just to see how it holds up. But I'm just going to give it a tie for now. Wally has a nice original, like, sort of storytelling in comparison to Bug's Life. You know what I mean? And Wally kind of does, like, some good social commentary, you know, what humans could do, what happens to humans in the future. That's really interesting talk. So I think that gives it a slight edge, sort of. But Bug's Life is still a fun film, as when I watched it as a kid, anyway. So that's why, you know, it's these two are right here right at the end of the A tier list, anyway. So, and of course it's Toy Story. Incredibles is still pretty good. Monsters Inc. and Incredibles, I think I said that they're pretty close with each other. You know what I mean? But S tier, this is a pretty clear ranking here. So obviously, first, Toy Story, absolutely. Toy Story 3, absolutely. Toy Story 4 at third. Comparing to Incredibles. Now, I will say, I really like the quotes that came from this film. The ideologies, the philosophies and such. This movie, it was just like good all around, you know, good technical piece. But I think I'm gonna give this a slight edge. I'm gonna raise it up a bit. But it's a very close race on these two. But I think Incredibles ranks over Toy Story 4 just because, you know, Toy Story 3 should have been the end, but it's still a good movie on its own for Toy Story 4. But The Incredibles, I can remember, like, the, you know, quotes and stuff, especially from Syndrome. He's such a memorable character. So, great villain. And then Monsters Inc., like I already said before, Coco, incredible story, despite the themes that not a lot of people or not a lot of companies tackle, you know. And I think they were able to do the best they could with this stuff. Mariachi, you know, celebrating the dead, and Mexican culture. You know, that's really nice to see. Really nice to see. And this is coming from the, you know, a Japanese dude, so that's really saying something, right? Although I will say though, I do have, you know, a good number of my close friends are of Mexican heritage, so it's like, I guess it makes sense. But so I do, you know, like to respect Hispanic culture, especially with Mexican culture. I guess that's where it comes from. But maybe, I don't know. But despite that, incredible movie, very emotional, especially when I was going through a pretty recent death of my grandparents, you know, my grandfather being last. And so this was kind of like a nice pick-me-up, and I absolutely was almost on the verge of tears. Oh, man. But S rank is pretty clear, I will say. So anyways, sorry for this long video. I know It was pretty long, but we did tackle the entire Pixar movie list, with the exception of Soul. Maybe I'll do an update video on that really quick once that comes out, whether it's Disney Plus or theaters. I'll be sure to check that one out. It looks really cool and interesting because it surrounds like jazz music and stuff, and soul and funk and all that stuff, I think. But anyway, let's leave it at that with this tier list. Pretty happy with it for right now. Like, even having these movies in a D list, they're not bad. It's just that in comparison to these, it's yeah. I think it's appropriate to say. So anyways, what do you guys think of this tier list? If you guys have your own sort of tier list you want to share, the comment section below, love to check them out. You can do that on tiermaker.com and type in the Pixar movies sort of thing on the search list or search bar. And yeah, if you want to take a shot at the Pixar tier list, you can go ahead and share that in the comment section below. I'd love to check those out. Don't forget to like the video if you did, and subscribe. Really helps out. Really appreciate it, guys. It's the most helpful thing for YouTubers. So anyways, this was a really fun video. Really simple, but fun video to go through, no less. And thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Maybe I'll do more of these. We'll see. All right, until then, take care, stay safe, and wash your hands. Sean out.